I once found myself in an all too familiar situation that at the time felt crushing. Early in my entrepreneurial journey, I became so focused on growth that I took on more debt than I could handle. My ambitions were sky high. My bank balance didn't match my vision. I genuinely believed that by borrowing heavily, I could scale up fast and outpace everyone else. I convinced myself that future success would justify the risk. But then, one thing went wrong and another followed, and suddenly the bills far outweighed the incoming revenue. My dreams of building a revolutionary startup began to feel like a nightmare I couldn't escape. I remember feeling a deep sense of shame and fear. It kept me awake most nights, heart pounding, mind racing, trying to figure out how to juggle multiple obligations that only seemed to grow by the day. Every call from a creditor was like a reminder of my vulnerability. Every conversation with team members felt weighed down by secrets too embarrassed to share. In those moments, I recognized just how easy it was to slip into a debt trap, even for someone who prided himself on being bold and forward-thinking. I realized with a stark clarity that despite all the promises of fast growth, I had endangered the very stability of everything I'd worked for. It was my lowest point, when I had to negotiate a critical loan, that the breakthrough finally arrived. There was a brutally honest conversation in which I confront how my personal ego and my desire to accelerate had blinded me to financial realities. It was painful, but it sparked a moment of genuine clarity. I saw that wreck was borrowing a short-term fix than a real solution. By acknowledging the real source of my panic, I understood how essential it was to change the way I viewed credit risk and sustainable growth. Now, I know that many of you in this room, and countless others watching from around the world, can relate to the anxiety and uncertainty that come with financial struggles. Perhaps you've brushed up at burdensome interest rates or found yourself juggling multiple credit cards, wondering if you'd ever catch up. The truth is, regardless of our backgrounds, debt can become a hidden chain that silently restricts our freedom and creative potential. Knowing that we share these fears, challenges connects us in a profound way, reminding us that this is a universal concern. So let's shift the conversation toward a new path, one that focuses on using credit responsibly as a powerful tool rather than a ticking time bomb. Let's explore concrete strategies that promote sustainable growth without losing sight of our financial well-being. Let's talk about how to protect our dreams instead of gambling them away with high-risk debt that only serves short-term illusions. If we can navigate this territory carefully, we'll not only safeguard our personal ambitions, but also set example for others. Together, let's step into a future where debt is managed thoughtfully, credit is harnessed wisely, and financial health becomes the launch pad for truly transformative innovation. The first crucial key point revolves around discovery. The heart of this idea lies in truly understanding how debt can spiral out of control and how we can build awareness to prevent it. Have you ever asked yourself with genuine curiosity? Each line of credit you open or every loan you sign might come back to haunt you. That question can feel uncomfortable, but it's an essential one if we are to make informed decisions about our finances. It's tempting to treat credit like a magical resource that solves all immediate problems. But if you don't pause to question why you are using it, what you will do if circumstances shift, or whether your income can keep pace, you risk stumbling headlong into a trap you never saw coming. When we ask, am I relying on debt to mask a deeper issue? We begin the journey of shedding illusions and facing reality head on. That query alone reveals potential blind spots in how we're choosing to grow or invest. By daring to ask ourselves whether every borrow is absolutely necessary, we take the first step toward building resilience and control rather than being controlled by our obligations. To illustrate the discovery process, consider a real-world example where a small business owner, inspired by rapid expansion stories, decided to open multiple lines of credit. She started with a modest business, a home-based bakery that had garnered rave reviews locally. Eager to grow faster, she took out a loan to purchase a food truck. Sales improved. Encouraged by this success, she borrowed more or less a larger commercial space. For a while, everything flourished. She even opened another location on credit, believing expansion was the logical next step. Then an unforeseen economic downturn hit and consumer spending tightened. Suddenly, foot traffic dropped and the interest from her various loans began to mount. She realized her margins weren't enough to keep up with the repayments on all the different forms of borrowed capital she had. Customers still loved the baked goods. It wasn't enough volume to float the new debt. Before long, stress overshadowed her passion. She was forced to downsize quickly, letting go of valuable staff and consolidating operations just to meet her mounting obligations. Looking back, she never truly asked if each expansion move was justified or if she had prepared for the possibility of a market slowdown. She had assumed steady consumer demand would always continue. Through this case study, it's evident how important it is to approach each borrowing decision with an understanding of both market volatility and personal risk tolerance, rather than chasing momentum without a safety net. With a closer lens on her story, We see several layers of insight emerge. In her expansion frenzy, she mistakenly believed more money equal more success. She did not factor in shifts in consumer trends or broader economic patterns that might have signaled caution. The deep analysis reveals that a major root cause was the lack of a realistic risk assessment. She was confident in her product quality and initial sales spikes, but overconfidence led her to overlook market research that might have indicated potential slowdowns or competitive saturation. This echoes a common theme. In the absence of a well-researched plan, debt accumulates faster than the revenue streams needed to sustain it. We also see that internal dynamics played a role. She was so enthusiastic that she rarely sought counsel from a financial advisor, nor did she pause to create a robust budget that accounted for lean times. When the external shock arrived, she had few contingencies in place. Practically speaking, the solutions to such pulls often revolve around creating a solid financial plan, establishing an emergency fund, and implementing disciplined budgeting. Responsible borrowing requires setting up clear boundaries. For instance, you might dedicate a certain percentage of profits for reinvestment and only use credit for target improvements with a targeted and predictable return. It means evaluating the worst-case scenario before signing that loan document. If a downturn happens, can you absorb the impact, or will you struggle to make even the minimum payments? Approach is to sequence expansion, carefully test each growth step with smaller capital outlays first, measure the results, then proceed if the data supports further investment. You can also maintain a buffer by ensuring you never borrow so much that one unexpected cost will send you into a tailspin. It's about balancing optimism with caution, applying consistent financial metrics to every significant decision, or losing sight of the principle that debt is a double-edged sword. It can be used to build, but can also dismantle your dreams. All these strategies converge into a breakthrough conclusion by actively questioning our assumptions about what credit can do and taking the time to research and plan. We empower ourselves to navigate growth safely. When we transform credit from a blind fix to a strategic resource, we shift from being reactive to being proactive. We start analyzing data, preparing for different economic climates, building in safeguards so that debt doesn't become a hidden chain of anxiety, but rather a calculated step toward a greater goal. Illuminating perspective comes from a well-known figure in history who faced immense challenges. Winston Churchill once remarked, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." Those words remind us that we're allowed to fall short or face stumbling blocks as long as we learn from them and keep moving forward. The power of discovery lies in realizing that small missteps don't need to define us, but we do need the courage to confront them and adapt. Responsible credit use is a prime example of where discovering hidden truths can mark the line between success and painful debt traps. Our second key point leans on a storytelling approach. Let me share with you the narrative of a friend who learned the hard way that mixing personal credit with business ambitions without adequate boundaries can create a storm that's difficult to escape. In her early 20s, she had a vision of launching a tech startup that would revolutionize a niche segment of the software market. Her story began on a bright note. She was a gifted programmer, had a clear sense of her product's direction, and believed wholeheartedly that with the right exposure, the market would embrace her idea. The story hook was that she was forging ahead in the sectors she understood technically, but was financially unprepared for the demanding reality of marketing a software solution in an increasingly competitive landscape. As she developed her product, the situation grew more complex. She started with her personal savings, but quickly ran short on the funds needed for hosting services, software licensing, and modest marketing efforts. Convinced that her startup was on the verge of a breakthrough, she applied for several personal credit cards with attractive introductory rates. On the surface, she appeared to handle the situation well. She juggled the credit lines, used them to pay for key software tools, even financed her small team's salaries in the early stages. The code was robust, the app was visually appealing, and prospective customers expressed real interest. These hints of success spurred her to keep charging more expenses to her credit card. Every time a statement arrived, she'd make the minimum payment, hoping increased sales would catch up before the promotional rates ended. Challenges began to pile up when other competitors released similar solutions. She felt pressure to accelerate her growth, which required even more marketing spend. Now, she was spending significant amounts on online ads, influencer partnerships, and promotional events. Her credit card balances started edging closer and closer to the limits. Then she faced the blow of a major algorithm change she depended on for user acquisition. One shift slashed her outreach in half. Despite her best efforts, the spike in users signed up, she relied on to justify her debt just wasn't materializing anymore. With the cards near max, interest rates set to jump after the introductory periods, and income from software sales still uncertain, her anxiety levels soared. The emotional and financial weight pressed down, and she felt as if every line of code she wrote carried the burden of a mounting, insidious debt that was spiraling beyond her control. She fought hard for solutions, seeking out mentors who had walked that path before. Some advised her to pivot her product, which required further investment. Others suggested she pitch to angel investors, but each presentation demanded polished marketing materials and more outlay of funds. Her story then took a dramatic turn. She had maxed out nearly all of her personal credit lines and realized she lacked the resources to continue the expansive debt in her business so desperately needed. She was stuck between a rock and a hard place to either find a way to consolidate the debt or watch her fledgling company risk shutting down because of overwhelming overhead costs. She had the skill and the initial traction. The sequence of overreaching on personal credit, combined with uncontrollable market factors, led her to a precarious cliff's edge. Through a series of tough conversations, she managed to negotiate a payment plan, found a partner willing to inject fresh capital, and scaled back her ambition temporarily to stabilize her financial situation. The lessons learned were profound. She realized she had conflated personal finances with her startup, herself in a vulnerable position. She recognized that her initial success signals, while promising not a guarantee of future earnings. Above all, she learned that debt is a momentum game that can work for you if you're pacing yourself with actual revenue growth, but it can turn on you in an instant if you rely on it too heavily. She came away with profound respect for credit as a tool that needs disciplined parameters. Her story resonates because so many entrepreneurs, creators, and dreamers find themselves in similar situations. The solution is not to avoid risk entirely, but to understand how to manage it. We share her yearning to bring something new into the world, to see an idea spark and flourish in the marketplace. That desire must come a balanced approach to financing. She reminds us that we can never fully control market shifts or disruptive competition, so we should build margins of safety into our debt strategy. We can't rely on the next product release or the next wave of revenue to justify more borrowing unless we've thoroughly tested our assumptions and planned for downturns. Emotional roller coaster teaches us the value realistic, even amidst big, bold ambitions, bold injunctions. Reflecting on our journey, we see a parable that connects to our own experiences. If we take away anything, it should be the commitment to stay alert, to remain flexible in our strategies, and not to let our personal credit become an unchecked reservoir for business expenditures. Instead, we can take small steps in borrowing, confirm demand through pilot projects or pre-orders, and then scale in proportion to actual revenue. The story also underscores of connecting partners with advisors or mentors sooner than waiting until we're in crisis. Finally, when it comes to forging our own paths, the story invites us to remain grounded in data-driven decisions. Balancing hope with financial reality is how we avoid letting the pursuit of our goals become overshadowed by the dread of mounting debt. For everyone listening or reading, her story may conjure a sense of relief. You're not alone if you become entangled in financial difficulties. It's a unifying reminder that behind every breakthrough product or successful venture, chapters of missteps or underestimations. The key is turning those chapters into guiding lessons. If you find yourself in a position where you're about to go deeper into debt, pause for a moment and look at the bigger picture. Is the market data truly supportive of the debt you're about to assume? Have you built enough runway to handle a delay or a competitive setback? Can you differentiate between sensible leverage for growth and reckless leaps based on untested assumptions? It's in these questions that we find not just caution but empowerment, a way to ensure we're building a stable foundation for our vision rather than gambling everything on a shaky structure of borrowed funds. Tale may have begun in uncertainty, but the resolution came with a deeper appreciation for credit as a delicate instrument. With the right approach, it can amplify success. With the wrong approach, it can decimate even the most promising ideas. She had to accept a temporary slowdown, recalibrate her priorities, and seek external partnerships, which ultimately made her product more resilient. She learned firsthand that scaling responsibly ensures that innovative ideas have a real chance to stand the test of time. When considering the future, let's remember that life will always throw curveballs. We can plan meticulously, do our homework, and still be blindsided, yet the best defense is a strong financial backbone that doesn't rely too heavily on credit to keep dreams afloat. By integrating this lesson, respect the dual nature of risk and opportunity, forging ahead with clarity, determination, and a keen sense of responsibility. The third key point comes from problem-solving perspective, focusing on how we identify challenges in responsible credit use, analyze root causes, propose concrete solutions, formulate a practical action plan, and determine success metrics that keep us accountable. One of the greatest challenges is the allure of easy money. Credit lines, especially in certain markets, can feel like a never-ending supply of funds. Many people don't view it as a challenge because society normalizes a dependence on borrowing, from student loans to credit cards for everyday essentials. We encounter marketing that encourages consumption and fosters a perception that having several credit accounts open is not only acceptable, but also a sign of financial maturity. This normalization creates an environment in which overextending becomes dangerously easy. Before long, monthly payments balloon, and the individual or business finds it difficult to keep up. Another challenge is misinformation or lack of education about interest structures, variable APRs, and long-term implications. People often focus on the short-term benefits, such as points, rewards, or immediate capital infusion, without understanding how compounding interest works or how a missed payment can lead to exorbitant penalties. To thoroughly address these challenges, we must examine the root causes that pave the way for misuse of credit. At the behavioral level, impulses and instant gratification play a big role. Society has conditioned us to expect immediate results, and debt often seems like the quickest way to get there. On a systemic level, financial education is not prioritized in many educational curricula, leaving individuals unaware of interest, compounding, hidden fees, slippery slope of high utilization ratios. Another critical root cause is the scarcity mindset many people inherit when they've experienced financial hardship. You might feel that if they don't take advantage of every borrowing opportunity, they'll never catch up or progress. So they end up taking on more than they can handle, convinced that future income or future opportunities will bail them out. Finally, there's the entrepreneurial drive, often celebrated, that pushes individuals to take significant risks without a clear fallback plan. Startups and scale-ups are praised for rapid growth, and we sometimes overlook the precarious financial positions that such expansion can entail. With the challenges and root causes clearly in front of us, let's propose solutions that address them systematically. First, a comprehensive overhaul of financial literacy can help. Making practical, hands-on education about credit management a standard part of schooling or workplace training would equip people with the knowledge needed to spot dangerous patterns. For existing borrowers, mandatory counseling sessions with financial advisors when seeking large loans can provide reality checks and stress testing scenarios. Next, adopting a scenario-based approach to borrowing decisions can be invaluable. Before taking on debt, run simulations of best case, median, and worst case financial forecasts. If you can't comfortably manage repayment conservative estimates, the loan is probably not advisable. On a more personal note, cultivating a mindset of delayed gratification helps. If we can replace the urge for immediate expansion or purchases with a long-term perspective, we'll be more likely to consider interest rates, potential dips in income, and how quickly debt can escalate. Beyond these proposals, building a robust network is essential. Having mentors or advisors with practical experience in credit management can guide startups and individuals in structuring debt responsibly. Critical is leveraging digital tools. There are numerous apps and platforms that track spending, calculate interest in real time, and remind you when you're nearing a dangerous utilization threshold. Such tools, used consistently, can mitigate the risk of unintentional overspending. The underlying principle remains the same to treat credit like a scalpel, precise and limited, rather than a blunt instrument used to hack away at every perceived problem or opportunity. The action plan stemming from these solutions involves concrete steps. First, identify your personal or business financial goals and set clear, measurable benchmarks. For instance, if you aim to expand your business, determine how much revenue you need to justify each borrowed dollar. Make it a rule that each financial decision goes through a quick but thorough evaluation process, an honest look at cash flow, a market forecast, and potential downsides. Second, create a realistic timeline for credit usage and repayment. Map not only how you plan to use borrowed funds, but also how and when you'll pay them back with a buffer for unexpected setbacks. This timeline should align with real revenue projections or personal salary expectations. Third, make a habit of regularly reviewing all open credit lines. Understand the interest rates, promotional periods, and potential penalties. If you notice something amiss, hiking the variable interest, an upcoming expiration of a low introductory rate, take immediate steps to mitigate risk by refinancing or adjusting your repayment plan. Fourth, track success metrics rigorously. Define what success means for you. It could be maintaining a certain credit utilization ratio, such as staying below 30% usage on your credit cards at all times. Might be achieving a specific debt to income ratio that fits your long-term financial goals. If you're running a business, success metrics might include the ratio of borrowed capital to net profit, ensuring that each loan is matched by tangible financial returns within a set period. You might also measure how quickly you can pay off new debt without compromising operational stability. To maintain momentum, celebrate these small victories, recognizing that you've kept your credit usage in check for multiple months or that you've cleared a significant loan ahead of schedule helps reinforce good habits. Finally, let's talk about success metrics in a broader sense. It's not just about checking boxes on a spreadsheet. Success in avoiding debt traps and using credit responsibly is about cultivating peace of mind and freedom to innovate. It means you aren't weighed down by anxiety over mounting obligations, so you can channel your energy into growing your business, improving your skills, or investing time in personal development. This freedom allows for genuine creativity, unencumbered by panic over bills that keep piling up. When you see your financial plan actually working, when the credit you've utilized drives real returns, and you can keep up with payments confidence that transforms how you approach future endeavors. A short, powerful quote that captures this sentiment comes from the entrepreneur and author Seth Godin, who said, "The cost of being wrong is less than the cost of doing nothing." These words, which contain 16 words, emphasize the importance of taking calculated action rather than succumbing to fear or reckless impulses. If we interpret the cost of being wrong with the responsible debt lens, it reminds us that while planned borrowing for growth is a rational risk, but it must be balanced against the steep cost of inaction or reckless leaps. By systematically solving problems around credit misses, we move into a space where we can afford to make strategic errors because we're prepared to handle them without being swallowed by debt. Now, as we gather everything we've learned, let's look ahead to a shared future vision. Imagine a world in which both individuals and businesses harness credit thoughtfully, seeing it as a lever that can raise us to new heights rather than a heavy chain that restricts our movements. Envision a landscape where financial education is embedded in our upbringing so that by the time we're ready to launch our ventures or make major life purchases, we're equipped with the knowledge to spot the pitfalls and adopt safeguards. Instead of stumbling into debt traps, we channel credit toward genuine opportunities, capital improvements, transformative research, personal skills development, knowing full well how to pace ourselves and measure returns. Picture an ecosystem which lenders, borrowers, investors, and entrepreneurs engage with mutual transparency. Recognizing that clarity and honesty around repayment terms and interest rates benefit everyone involved, this more enlightened financial culture would cultivate resiliency, ensuring that while we still take risks, we do so without jeopardizing our mental health, relationships, or capacity for innovation. Indeed, our combined potential would be amplified by using credit as a calculated springboard rather than a reckless gamble. To get there, we must undertake a collective challenge, encourage a mindset shift that swaps impulsiveness for strategic thinking. It demands that governments, educational institutions, private enterprises align in providing better financial resources and guidance. It also calls for each of us to question cultural norms that champion appearances of wealth or success at the expense of stable foundations. If we can step forward and face the uncomfortable truth about how easily we can slip in unsustainable borrowing, then we can champion a new era of responsible credit use. This is the challenge I put to you today. Examine how you approach debt, identify where you may be overreaching, and commit to reining in those habits. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Take a hard look at any illusions you might hold about endless financial lifelines or overnight success stories. Success rarely comes overnight, and the lifelines of credit need anchoring in realistic repayment strategies. In that spirit, let me express my commitment to support those who are inspired to walk this path. I believe we each have an obligation to share our experiences, the pitfalls, the triumphs, the cautionary tales, so that others can learn and adapt. Personally, I will continue to advocate for more accessible tools that demystify credit and conditions, ensuring that everyday people and budding entrepreneurs alike are left guessing about hidden charges or punitive interest structures. I will also push for mentorship opportunities in which seasoned professionals can guide newcomers toward better decision making around loans, credit lines, and large-scale investment strategies. Because often, it's a simple piece of advice or a cautionary anecdote that can illuminate the path for someone standing on the precipice of a major financial decision. We stand stronger when our community collectively understands that real growth is about stability and innovation working hand in hand. As we near the end of our conversation today, hope you're feeling a renewed sense of possibility and, most importantly, empowerment. We've explored personal mistakes, cautionary tales, and practical frameworks for protecting our financial well-being by using credit responsibly. We've recognized that failure isn't the end, that a painful lesson can be a pivotal catalyst for a new trajectory, that each of us is capable of adopting a more measured approach to debt. This is about more than money. It's about your capacity to bring ideas to life without the weight of crippling obligations. It's about preserving your mental clarity so you can continue to innovate, dream, and contribute something meaningful to the world. Let this serve as an invitation to chart course carefully to respect the power of credit and to steward your financial health as diligently as you do your creativity and work ethic. Before I close, let me leave you with an inspiring note. You have the power to reshape your relationship with credit starting right now. No matter the mistakes you've made before or the doubts that keep you awake at night, it's never too late to learn, adapt, and thrive. By committing to responsible financial practices, position yourself to seize opportunities when they arise, rather than being forced to pass them up because your finances are stretched too thin. You give yourself room to maneuver in times of crisis. Resilience can be a key difference between stagnation and evolution. So go forward with confidence, knowing that your future is not dictated by debt, but rather by the careful strategic steps you take to harness credit as a force for good in your life. Let's keep lifting each other up through shared knowledge. Let's remember that no vision is truly impossible when it's built on a solid foundation of wisdom and responsibility.